Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming again, and a big Yasher Koach, and thank you to Ilan and Linda for hosting once again this week. One of the most special moments of the week takes place on a regular basis on Friday night. So picture this: my entire family's gathered together. No, that's not a usual occurrence. I have children all over the world, but imagine that it's which will be open. Let's imagine it's the summer. So the family's gathered together back from shul. We've sung Shalom Aleichem. We've sung Eishes Chayil, and then what happens? What do we do next? Kiddush. Before Kiddush.
Blessing the children.
Right. Judy. Right. So what happens is that I will walk over. I actually personally don't do this, but in most homes, this happens where the children line up and the parents, either just the father or the mother and the father, they give a special blessing to their children. They say the priestly blessing. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, yoer Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka, yisah Hashem panav elecha v'yosem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord deal kindly and graciously with you. May the Lord bestow His favor upon you and grant you peace. So I, as the father, become a vehicle for God's blessing. So the blessing that God bestows upon my children will be sort of channeled through me. And it's an incredible experience. I always forget to do it. And when I do it, my kids don't line up. They'll be over the course of the meal. I'll just walk over and touch their head and do the thing that I do. But in other people's homes, it's not like that. It's a little bit more ceremonial. It's a little bit more ornate, and it's moving, and it's emotional, and people have written songs about it, and all the other melodramatic stuff that people associate with family gatherings. It's a Jewish hallmark moment. But you can actually find really, really old postcards that show, like going back about 150, 200 years, father giving the blessing to his children. And what I note is the custom involved. In which hand does he use to put his hand on the head? Like we know that's a very old Jewish custom. Put your hand on the kid's head. We know this. Where does that come from? Does anybody know?
Of course.
Where?
Jacob-Mikveh.
Yeah, right. Very good. From Yaakov. Yaakov put his hands on Ephraim and Menashe's heads, except he kind of confused his hands. But the question always is: do you use your right hand? Do you use both hands? And most people I know use both hands. But if you take a look at these old postcards, they're not pictures. They're like hand painted cards that depict these scenes in a Jewish home that were used as as postcards. The father's using only his right hand. He's not using both hands. Just a very, very, very unusual point of point of practice that I'm always interested in, because there's a lot of discussion amongst halachic authorities. When would you use two hands? And the one rabbi writes, well, if you're giving a blessing to your daughter and your daughter happens to be pregnant, then you use two hands, but otherwise you only use one hand. Well, it's the arcane stuff. That's what always gets me. We're fortunate, because we just had an experience where we were able to, be a participant in Birchas Kohanim, in the duchening. When the Kohanim go up onto the right in front of the Aron, and they give their very special bracha, and children run under their father's talis. I wasn't there the first day because I davened with the early minyan. And my son Avram Chaim went around looking for my father, but he was apparently learning in the library, so he wasn't there for the duchening. But it's something that it's always an experience. It's always something that's really, really meaningful for kids, especially. Kids love going under their father's talis. And in Israel, they actually say Birchas Kohanim every single Shacharis. They do it every single day. That's just part of one of the things that they do. And Birchas Kohanim, the source for the blessing, comes from this week's Parsha. And in this week's Parsha, we have our very first source. So let's take a look at what it says in this week's Parsha, Parshas Nasso. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. And Hashem said to Moshe, saying, Daber el Aharon ve'el banov. Speak to Aharon, speak to his sons, lemor, saying, Chosevarchu es b'nei Yisrael, amor lohem. This is how you will bless the Bnei Yisrael, and this is what you will say to them. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and protect you. Yo'er Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God enlighten or turn His face towards you and be gracious to you. Yisah Hashem panav elecha. May God's countenance sort of accept you. May it greet you. V'yosem lecha shalom. And may He place for you peace. The Samu Eshmi of Bnei Yisrael, and the Kohanim will place my name, on the Bnei Yisrael, Vani Avarachem, and I will bless them. So this is a very difficult blessing to decipher, and there are many points of ambiguity, because what exactly is the blessing about? What are we exactly hoping that God will bestow? It's not entirely clear. You have light, you have peace, definitely at the end. That's something that's concrete. We can definitely identify what that is. But what exactly is this may God bless you? It's a very, very vague, very, very broad terms. What exactly is it that's going to that we're hoping that God is going to bestow? And at a philosophical level, we have to pose another question. Does anybody notice the conflict here? The contradiction in the verses? Who's doing the blessing? It starts off by saying, this is how you, the Kohanim, will bless Israel. And how does it conclude? What are the last words? And I will bless them. So who's actually giving the bracha here? Who's actually blessing it? Is it God or is it the Kohanim? So what exactly is happening? We have this conflict. We have this contradiction. So let's answer these questions. The very first source, other than the verses that we're going to read from, is from the Rashbam. The Rashbam was Rashi's grandson, who also lived in France. And he's very clear that the priestly blessings are a formula by which man can petition God to bless Israel. And the Abarbanel also shares the same approach. And we're going to look at both of these sources. Kosavarchu es b'nei Yisrael, this is the Rashbam. So this is a medieval French commentator. Kolomer lo sevarchu mi birchas pichem ka'adam she'omer tvuasa l'rosh ploni kach v'kach. It's not a blessing where person A goes to person B and says, may your crops, may your bounty be very, very great. Elo elai hispalalu she'avorachem ani. Rather, the Kohanim are praying that I will bless them. And this is really a question you can ask just in general. How do blessings work? If I give somebody a bracha, is this a force that I'm bestowing, some emanation that comes from my mouth that surrounds the individual and changes their fate? Or is it me voicing a tefillah, a prayer, and Hashem responds? Well, according to the Rashbam, quite obviously, it's the latter. It's me voicing a prayer. It's here, definitely. The Kohanim are praying. They're saying, please God, bless these people. And Hashem responds with the bracha. And he continues. How do we know this? Kamosha Mefarish. It's very, very clearly, it's very explicit here within the words from the text. Yivarechecha Hashem. Because what are they saying? It's that God should bless you. Va'ani eshma kolchem. And I will hear your voice. Kasher tomru. I will hear that which you say. And he goes on and he repeats this idea several times. And he speaks to this idea, again, that it is God who's blessing the Jewish people, and the Kohanim are merely the prompters. They're the elicitors, but they're not necessarily the ones generating the bracha themselves. Let's take a look at the Abarbanel. Who is the Abarbanel? The Abarbanel lived during the time of the Spanish Inquisition and then the expulsion. He was allowed to remain in, I might have been Spain or Portugal, I don't remember which one, because he was the finance minister for the country, and he was given a special exemption from the expulsion. And he stayed for a little bit, and then he left. But he was a Torah commentator, he was a Torah scholar, he was a bit of a rationalist, but not a Maimonidean rationalist. And this is what he writes, and he speaks to the fact that there are different ways in which we use the word blessing. Vani kavar kosafti. This is source number 3. Vani kavar kosafti al pasuk vayiki zaken Yitzchak shabracha shem mashutav ki yesh mimena shashem yisbarach li nivra'av v'hi hashpa v'hatava. We find that the word bracha can mean many things. For example, when he says that that God blessed Abraham, or when God blessed Isaac, for example, this is an example where God's emanating goodness, some positive power is coming from Shemayim and enveloping the person and changing some aspect of them, some fate, some divine providence, whatever the case may be. And he says that's one way in which we use the word bracha, where it's God, where it's between God and man, where God is the point of origin. V'yesh bracha shehi mehanivroim elov yisparach. V'hihilul v'shevach. Sometimes we use the word bracha as a form of praise or adulation. Like, for example, vayivarech David. And Avarecha es Hashem b'chol eis. I will bless God at all times. And things like this. So this is a bracha that we give, which is a form of praise for God. So this is the second way in which we use the word bracha. Bracha is a fairly all-encompassing term. And then finally, we have the last form of the word. Birchas Hashem linivra v'lo shabach v'hodah ki birchas habruim leborei ela tefila v'bakashos rachmim al hamavarech sheyashpia alav hakadosh baruch hu mibirchaso. The third form of blessing is where I sort of petition a prayer, and Hashem responds and delivers this to, fulfills the blessing, fulfills the prayer, and some beneficence or whatever it is that emanates from God will envelop the person, and blessings happen. Man can act as a catalyst, but ultimately the blessings of man are no more than a wish or a prayer, and this is how he concludes, and he says, where do I know this from? What is the prime example? What would be the template of just such a blessing? He comes out at the end. It is Birchas Kohanim, the blessing that the Kohen bestows upon the children. The Kohen bestows upon the Jewish people. So we see from all of these sources that the origin, the source for the blessing is God. The catalyst is the person, is the Kohen in this case. Well, we have to ask the question, why is that necessary? Why does a person have to be present? Why cannot God just emanate his blessing without this articulation, without this prompt from the Kohen? So to answer that question, we're going to take a look at something written by Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, the Rav of Frankfurt. He says, and this is source number 4, the Kohanim should bless Israel. How? They should declare that the name of the one and only God hovers over them, that everything streams from him, and that he is the only source of blessing. Hence, it's not the Kohen who blesses or has the power to bless. It is God that blesses. But Birchas Kohanim, taken to heart by the community of Israel, is then a prerequisite of blessing being granted by God. God blesses him who expects the blessing from God himself. Do you wish a blessing from God? Then think of God as the only source of blessing, and then God will bless you. So, according to Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, it's the same dynamic. The same thing is playing out. God is the source of the blessing. But he adds something more here. He contributes an additional component. And that is that it's not simply that Kohanim are prompting God to bless the Jewish people. The Kohanim are also priming the Jewish people to be receptive to a bracha, to be worthy of a blessing. Blessings don't happen by themselves. God is kind of like inertia in that, or God operates with inertia. That is, nothing's going to change unless something is acted upon it. And the way we act upon God is by changing ourselves. By contemplating God as the source of the blessing, that makes us worthy of blessing. It elevates us and causes God to bless us. So if we were to now take a look back at the verses, we can perhaps read this into what it says. It says that God tells Moshe, speak to the children of Israel that they should bless the Bnei Yisrael. They should articulate that God is the source of the blessing, that He will bless you, He will guard you, that He will shine His light to you and be gracious towards you, that He will turn His face towards you and He will grant you peace. And by having a Yisrael articulate this bracha for the Kohen to recite, you're connecting both parties together and solidifying this in the minds of the assembled people. And by us then being connected to God in this way, the Samu as Shani al Bnei Yisrael, by the Jewish people now having God's name placed upon them in their psyche, in their minds, in their hearts, va'ani avarachem. And by that with that I shall bless them. So according to everything we've said so far, God is the source of the bracha, God is the source of the blessing. The Kohanim are a necessary component because they cause us to confront God as the source of blessing, elevating us to therefore become worthy of the bracha that Hashem will bless. All right, so now, with that, let's turn our attention now to the contents of the blessing. It's clear that we have three distinct phases. And so we're going to analyze each line, each verse, each pasuk. So we start off with the first phrase, Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and protect you. So let's take a look right away at Rashi. So this is source number 5. Let's take a look at what Rashi says. Yivarechecha, what does it mean? Sheyizborachu nichasecha. You should be blessed, that you should have increased possession. So it's about monetary gain. That God should bless you with success in your business and may He grant you prosperity. What is v'yishmerecha then? Shlo yavo'u alecha shodedim litol mamonecha. That shodedim, brigands, should not come and take all of your stuff. If person A gives person B a gift, he can't protect that gift. And therefore, if the gift ever gets taken away, if the gift ever gets stolen, then any benefit that the recipient receives is now moot. He's not receiving any more benefit at all. So, however, Hashem is promising, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Anosin Hu Hashomer, God, He is the blesser, He's the bestower, He's the one who grants this gift, this increase in possession, and He's the one who's able to provide the protection to ensure that that monetary gain not be lost. Rashi's not alone in this. According to Rashi, the entirety of the blessing is about stuff, about monetary stuff, physical stuff, that God should give you things. However, the Ha'emek Dover, who is the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Berlin, he gives a different interpretation to the blessing. And this is what he says, and this is source number 6. Yivarechecha. It's not simply, as Rashi says, about just giving you stuff. Nichlal b'zeh l'chol adam kafi haroi lo lihisbarech. Everybody has something for which they can be blessed for. For example, he says, a person who studies Torah can be blessed with success in his learning. A person who engages in business, he should be he'll be blessed with prosperity. A artist will be granted more artistic talent or musical talent, whatever the case may be. But according to the Ha'emek Davar, the blessing is not solely about stuff. It's about the kinds of blessings that God could give every individual according to what their needs, what their interests, and what their talents are. However, he says, well, according to Rashi, we understand why you need to have this shmir, this protection. If I'm being given success in my learning or success in my musical talent, then why does that need to be safeguarded? And so he continues, v'yishmerecha. The chol davar bo yishmira. Everything requires some kind of protection, because anything can go bad, anything can go sour. Somebody who studies Torah, for example, has to be protected from arrogance and from chilul Hashem. A person who engages in business has to ensure that his wealth doesn't go to his head and he become also arrogant, also miserly, also all the other pitfalls that are associated with very quickly accruing wealth. There have been sociological studies done on people who've won the lottery and how that has affected their life. And overall, it is not a net positive getting a lot of money. It can affect you in negative ways. It affects how people think of you. It affects your relationships. It affects you, the kind of person you are. People are affected. They're changed by wealth. People who are musical, their music can, give pleasure to the entire world. They can be on everybody's mouth, but they can also lead to a certain level of, of arrogance and haughtiness. Creativity has to be tempered with practicality, and so on and so forth. So thus we're asking Hashem for both protection. Not protection from loss of blessing, but protection from the side effects of the very blessings that we've been granted. The next two blessings are about God's face shining towards us. And the commentators speak to the fact that there's actually a lead up here. There's something that's growing. And you can even see it within the verses themselves. Nechama Leibowitz points out, for example, the first verse starts with 3 words, the next one 5, and the final one has 7 words. And the Sephora also talks about that there's a material progression here. We start off with material blessings, and then we move our way through Torah and spirituality and the sublime life of the world to come. And we conclude then with Shalom, with peace. What exactly is the blessing of peace? Let's take a look. We're going to continue with the Ha'emek Davar, which is on source number 7. What is V'yosem L'cha Shalom? Achar kol habrachos. After all of the blessings, Mivarachim B'kli Hamachazik Osam. We're now been blessed with the utensil that can now hold all brachos. I could have wealth, I could have musical talent, but if I live in a chaotic, crazy world, that doesn't avail me all that much. I can't gain the benefits of those blessings that I've been achieved, or I can't appreciate them. I can't enjoy them. So therefore, Shalom is the ultimate blessing because it allows us to enjoy everything else that we've received. Shebli Shalom, because without peace, he concludes, Ein nachas b'shum bracha. There's no delight, no pleasure can be derived from any kind of blessing. So according to this, the bracha that we receive is emanated from God. It's through the agency of the Kohen and the effect that he has on us, the Yisrael. And the blessings speak about, according to the various interpretations, about the ways that God could bless us. And the ultimate bracha that we receive at the end is that of Shalom. But there's another insight here that's somewhat tangential, but I think is really quite key and really quite important. I didn't speak about the Parshas Bamidbar, but if I did, I would have spoken about how the book of Bamidbar is a shift from the book of Vayikra in a very significant way. In the book of Vayikra, the focus is on priestly ritual. It's on the Mishkan, it's on the sanctuary, it's on the temple, it's on sacrifices. And who are the primary personalities, the primary people, the movers and shakers, the characters, the protagonists of Sefer Vayikra? It's Moshe, Aaron, and his sons, almost exclusively. These are the people who are doing all the things that we read about in Sefer Vayikra. In Parshas Bamidbar, however, the topic shifts. We're now no longer talking about priests to the same extent. We've now introduced another group, the Nesiim, the tribal leaders, the civil leadership. And they become the primary figures. They are the first people mentioned in the book of Bamidbar. Hashem enumerates to Moshe, these are the people who are going to help you conduct the census. These are the tribal leaders. And they become the primary actors throughout the entirety of the Parsha. And this week's Parsha continues that very same theme. We have in the Torah the completion of the sanctuary discussed 3 times. The most important times that the sanctuary is discussed, the Mishkan is built, is in Sefer Vayikra, where we read about all the various sacrifices that the Kohanim offered, the role that the Leviim played. We read about Nadav and Avihu, how they died because they brought a strange fire, but they're the primary actors. In this week's Parsha of Nasso, we continue that shift from Sefer Vayikra to Bamidbar, because we have the inauguration, except that we have a different cast of characters doing something else. We have a very verbose, very, very long, very repetitive list of all the various sacrifices that all of the tribal leaders brought at the inauguration. They're describing the same inauguration, but the different books focus on a different cast of characters, because all of these characters are important because they fill different roles. With this in mind, with Sefer Bamidbar as a work that focuses on the different role and the different place for Jewish leadership, we also see a change. We also see a shift in the role that the Kohanim play. When it comes to the Kohanim, for example, in Sefer Vayikra, they're functionaries. They offer sacrifices. They determine purity and impurity. They're primarily engaged in the temple or in the Mishkan. However, here we have an example of where the Kohanim play a completely different role. In the beginning of the Parsha, they're there mediating between a husband and a wife in the story about the Sota. And in the story, and this part of Birchas Kohanim, in the priestly blessing, we have here where they fill the role of bringing God from the sanctuary into the lives of the Bnei Israel, into the Jewish people, outside of the sanctuary. So as much as the book of Bamidbar is about the secular leadership and the secular organization of the Jewish people, it also casts a new role for the Kohanim, in that here they act through Birchas Kohanim as the mediators to bring God from the sacred, from the Mishkan, into the secular, into the mundane, secular world and life of the camp outside of the Mishkan. And here we have a new role, a new place for the Kohanim, a new task for them to fulfill, where they now bring godliness from the Mishkan and convey it outside of the Mishkan. And that's perhaps why Birchas Kohanim is specifically here enmeshed with all of this tribal leader stuff, because the Kohanim and Sefer Bamidbar are being outlined as having another role besides for being the functionaries in the Mishkan, but for being the ones to convey the blessings of God and godliness itself, connecting the Jewish people to God and God to the Jewish people even outside of the Mishkan itself. And with that, we conclude the class.